Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're unpacking one of the wildest, most incredible unsolved mysteries the FBI has ever seen. I want you to picture the scene with me. It's a rainy, gray evening in Portland, Oregon. The date is November 24th, 1971. Now, it's the day before Thanksgiving, which means airports across America are just absolutely packed to the brim. Families are hurrying to get home to their loved ones, and businessmen are rushing through terminals to catch their flights. The atmosphere is loud, busy, and just total chaos. But we're going to look at one specific flight that night, Northwest Orient Flight 305, and see how a seemingly ordinary evening transformed into an absolute legend.
36. That's the exact number of passengers who boarded that aircraft in Portland. Just 36 people who were trying to get home for the Thanksgiving holiday. And they were completely, blissfully unaware of the historical event they were about to become a part of. They just settled into their seats, stowed their bags, and prepared for what should have been a routine short jump over to Seattle. And joining those passengers were the 6 crew members of Northwest Orient Flight 305, 6 professionals just going about their daily routine in an era long before the TSA and intense security checks, making sure the cabin was secure and prepping for departure. And just like the folks in the cabin, these flight attendants and pilots had absolutely no idea that history was taking off right along with them. To literally everyone on board, this was just another Wednesday evening flight.
Except, they were actually stepping into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in FBI history. Think about how incredible that is for a second. A perfectly ordinary flight on a perfectly ordinary Thanksgiving Eve is about to turn into a legendary piece of true crime. Everything seemed so normal on the surface, but underneath, the gears of a massive criminal plot were already turning.
And this brilliantly illustrates the insane tension of that evening. Just look at the contrast. On one hand, you have your typical frantic holiday travel scene. It's loud, and families and businessmen are rushing around, super stressed out about making it home for turkey. But amidst all that chaos, standing right there at the Portland International Airport ticket counter is a remarkably quiet, calm, and highly polite man. He is entirely unbothered by the holiday rush around him, simply stepping up to purchase a one-way ticket to Seattle.
The name he gave at that ticket counter? Dan Cooper. Yep, this is the alias that would soon be broadcast across the entire globe. He booked his flight under this incredibly ordinary, unassuming name. Just a man named Dan Cooper. It's the kind of name that blends perfectly into a crowd of busy travelers. But who exactly was this guy?
Well, what is truly fascinating is how thoroughly ordinary he appeared. We're looking at a man in his mid-40s, standing around 6 feet tall. He's wearing a dark business suit, complete with a neatly clipped black tie and polished black loafers. The only luggage he has with him, a black briefcase and a simple brown paper bag. In 1971, this whole Mad Men era, dark suit, neatly clipped tie, and briefcase look, that was the absolute uniform of the American businessman. It was literally the perfect urban camouflage. He was completely invisible in plain sight. But the crucial point here is the sheer, trivial cost of initiating this massive historical event. $20 in cash. That was the cost of his one-way ticket to Seattle. To put that into perspective, in today's money, that's only around $150. And the most shocking part for any modern traveler to hear? He paid in cash with absolutely no ID required, 0 background checks, and no metal detectors to pass through. It was a remarkably mundane transaction for a quiet man with a briefcase, basically buying a one-way ticket into American folklore.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because the escalation happens incredibly fast. He purchases his ticket at the counter, and shortly after, Flight 305 lifts off into the gray Oregon sky, leaving the frantic terminal behind. The aircraft smoothly reaches cruising altitude, the seatbelt signs likely turn off, and the crew begins their in-flight service. And then just minutes into the flight, the inciting incident occurs. The quiet man named Dan Cooper makes his move.
He quietly hands a folded piece of paper to a 23-year-old flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. Now everything hinges on this. The whole shebang comes down to this tiny, folded piece of paper passing from the quiet businessman into the hands of a completely unsuspecting crew member.
And guys, this creates some of the most agonizing, dramatic irony imaginable. Cooper hands over the note, right? But Florence Schaffner, who is entirely used to dealing with traveling businessmen, simply assumes he's trying to flirt and pass her his phone number. So she just slips it into her purse unread. Her innocent assumption delays the realization of the hijacking, while a terrifying manifesto just sits there quietly in her bag. And him? He just sits there, as calm as ever.
Which leaves us with this incredible edge-of-your-seat cliffhanger.
What happens when she finally reads the note? Because eventually, she has to look inside. This seemingly normal Thanksgiving Eve flight is suspended in the air. A calm man in a suit sits quietly, and a terrifying message is just waiting to be read. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this deep dive into the opening moments of the D.B. Cooper mystery leaves you desperate to uncover the rest.